So thank you all for joining this session today. I'm Roi, CEO of Airbridge. And today here we are with industry leading figures from Canva, Inkitt, Spotify, and Begin. So maybe starting with Sunil, would you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm Sunil. I lead our growth marketing organization at Canva. Canva is a digital design tool suite. We're trying to create a new category around the visual economy. We're understanding in a world where there's an increasingly global and distributed workforce, how we actually connect and collaborate. So we have apps, desktop experiences, and we're 85 million monthly active users all over the world. I lead our acquisition, engagement, and MarTech efforts.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lenette. I'm the user acquisition lead at Inkitt. So Inkitt has two apps, Inkitt and Galatea. The one that I'm running paid acquisition for is Galatea. It's a reading app with lots of stories. Like probably our biggest genre right now is romance. We can get like pretty specific as well into like contemporary romance, like some werewolf romance stories that gets like pretty steamy. In the app, there's 3 ways to read. So one of the most interesting ones is immersive reading, where it's like normal reading, but you get to read with sound. So if you're reading about like a werewolf running through a forest, then you hear that in the background. And then there's like the normal reading as well as audiobooks. And the app is freemium, but with IP purchases as well as subscriptions.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan, and I'm a product lead for marketing automation products at Spotify. I'm working in the growth team right now. And as you all know, Spotify is a music streaming company, and now we expanded to podcasts and also audiobooks recently. So we're expanding to all things related to audio right now. And we are heavily working with the performance marketing team to build the products to automate a lot of user acquisition efforts that we do at Spotify, and happy to talk about that today.
Thank you, Ryan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Todd. I'm the VP. Is this working? All right, yeah. VP of Growth at Begin. We're an ed tech company based out of New York City. So we own and operate 4 to 5 different businesses focused on early education learning. In the app space, we have a company called Homer, which is focused on learning math and SEL for kids ages 3 to 6. We have a company called CodeSpark, which is focused on coding for kids 6 to 10. And then the non-app world, also in the app world, we have a partnership with Sesame that we launched a couple weeks ago, focusing on SEL for kids 0 to 1, 0 to 2. And then we have 2 non-app businesses, one called Little Passports, which is focused on physical box subscription. And then we also have a business called Kid Pass, focused on tutoring and experiential to kind of help support that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. So I would like to start off this session by asking each one of the panels individual questions. And why don't we start with Canva? So I understand that Canva is one of the largest graphic design platforms in the world. And there could be 2 types of campaigns. One is acquiring free users and converting them to the paid users after activation. And then the other one could be just bringing in users who would just immediately sign up and then do the paid subscription. So how is your strategy split between just acquiring the free users, or what are your focus area in this?
Yeah, so there are definitely multiple strategies, and we think about it from the aspect of what the market fit is for our products and where we think we can generate revenue and where we think it's better to look at bringing in users. And so there's been kind of a pivoting experience in trying to think about, in some of our more mature markets and English-speaking markets, we do look at ROAS and trying to make sure that we're above a certain level. But we understand that what we're really trying to do is create ubiquity. And so it's trying to figure out how we grow our addressable market and across the world. And so we value users in each market based on our market penetration and the value that we can get from that user in terms of the product market fit and the quality. So we really think about how we can ensure we have the right experience, localized experience for these particular markets, like India, Brazil, and China, and then ensure that both the creative that we're running as well as the product experience that we're running. And so one of the things that we've understood is that trying to upsell someone very quickly from a mobile app experience is not going to generate the right actions. So what we're really focusing on is trying to improve that inference of the first job to be done, ensure that we can allow that to happen, and then show that value to show the other premium aspects of the product that you can have and the cross-platform experience that you can get when you move from app to desktop.
So you mean you focus on acquiring free users first, or is it that you, so how do you split between these two strategies, like free and the paid campaign?
Yeah, particularly on mobile app, it's a focus on free users. I mean, if you look at it from an iOS and Android perspective, iOS is going to give you a higher revenue, but if you're globally looking at it, Android is your primary platform. So we're really looking at user quality in a lot of our international markets, and we're trying to understand how we can create a blended user value, and we look at the actions that individuals are taking, and we're looking to try to send that information back to the media platforms to find and bid appropriately for high or low quality users to make it as efficient as possible.
Mm-hmm. So since you mentioned user quality, can you actually give us a glimpse into how are you measuring the quality of the users that you're acquiring?
Yeah, there are certain actions we see that they're taking in the platform, whether it's opening up a doc type, actually completing and publish, and then sharing that doc with other individuals. And so what we start to see is that certain behaviors and indications lead to an understanding that there's a better understanding of the product market fit for this user. And what we're starting to do is understand their ability to move through the path and their time to conversion into a subscription product. But we recognize that not everyone needs the subscription product, and that's okay. So we have to figure out how we balance that growth. But what we do recognize is that this kickstart investment in these international markets helps to fuel the organic growth that creates that validation of higher value customers coming in through more organic means.
I see. Yeah. Thanks for the great insights, Sunil. So what about you, Lenette? So under ATT, I want to ask you, what metrics would you say are important to Galatea in terms of user acquisition?
So as Galatea's main goal is ROAS, like for our UA team, we specifically look at like app level ROAS and trying to get our blended paid user campaigns to hit that level. So for Android, it's as it was. So I'm more interested in talking about the iOS side of things now. And so I would go back to like principles, like looking at, revenue over cost. And that means that on the app level, that LTV and the payback curve informs you like what your like day zero payer conversion rate is, what the average revenue per user each type of user segment brings you, and then what the resulting ROAS is. And in terms of iOS, like there's just some things that are deterministic and most things are directional. So I think what you can control is cost. And so I look at CPM. So I follow the CPM trend over time, and I look for avenues to optimize my CPI downwards by improving on creatives, improving on targeting per se. So CTR, CVR, IPM are super important on the top funnel, and those are like deterministic things that you can optimize on, because when it comes in through scan, you know for sure like how many installs you get, and like for like 80% sure like how many payers that you get. And if you have set up your CV2 schema to accurately reflect the value of your users, I found that directionally, like week over week, month over month, for your scaled up evergreen campaigns, they can be quite stable. Mm-hmm. And then directionally look at like what your app level ROAS is as your North Star for if your campaigns are working or not.
I see. So you mentioned that you actually try to focus on looking into the day zero metrics. And is there any specific reason why you're looking into day zero metrics?
Yeah, because post-specs take about like 72 hours, give or take, to come back. And for an iOS campaign to work, whether it's probabilistic or scan only. It has to be above like a certain spend to meet certain like privacy thresholds. So basically, sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, so why do you focus on looking into day zero metrics? And you're answering that question right now. So.
Right. So why I focus on day zero metric is because in order to get like the first day of data, right? By the time it comes to your system, it's already day 4. If you're lucky, you have some like probabilistic data from the first 3 days. But in order to get like a complete picture and to take into account that the networks need to optimize on limited data, I'd say like day 0, focusing on day 0 metrics means that you'll first get your like first set of early data in 7 days. And 7 days, in like 2020 is like way too long, but this year, like 7 days is pretty good. And I think if you have a campaign that isn't working, you want to know if you can pause it on the 7th day, or do you have to wait until like the 14th day? Then it really impacts your bottom line.
I see. So definitely, you to summarize what you said, one of the reasons why you don't actually take a look into some of the post-install metrics, compared to the past, is because of the SKN network really being pretty much delayed in delivering the post-spec results. It actually takes up to 72 hours, as you mentioned, and not just because of that, but also due to the nature of the Galatea service as well.
Yeah. So we, as a product, our monetization model focus on like super early day conversion. So how we've developed our monetization model is that we expect most users to convert in the first 24 hours. And I would say like the last significant bump is on day 7. So it's basically geared towards like successful acquiring like through UA, because we're like pretty niche, and we're also like more of like a non-gaming app. So yeah, like so far that has worked pretty well for optimizing like on like the early 24 hours, and we just focus on like IAP as well as subscriptions. So another way that I would look at it is that if you have a subscription model, on average like how much max revenue you can get from a user like per year, and you also know based on your retention curve how long you expect this user to stay in your system. So you have like a maximum, CAC, like customer acquisition cost that you need, and then based on your payer rates, like I would just back calculate and have like a range of values I find acceptable for day 0, and that's just it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, thank you, Lenette. And moving on to Ryan. So I know that Spotify has been developing your own automation solution for creatives and campaigns. So could you actually elaborate more on that? And then also, could you let us know how it is contributing to the user acquisition strategy of Spotify?
Yeah. So I guess I can start off with the background, like why we decided to build this internal machine. So about 3-4 years ago, we only had one type of performance marketing ad, which was utilizing the photography, like lifestyle images or like illustrations in our ads. And we started asking ourselves one question, which is like, why aren't we leveraging the content we have on our platform? The content being like artist images or like the lyrics or the music videos even. So that's when we started like thinking about like how can we run content ads like at the global scale. And for us, running the ads at the global scale is very important because we run the ads like in 170 like plus markets right now. And then like in each market, we need to localize the ads. For example, in France, we need to use French. In Korea, we need to use Korean. In Japan, we need to use Japanese ads. So in order to run those kind of ads at the global scale in human power, like it was almost impossible to do so. So that's when we started thinking about, let's just build a machine to do that. So we built a system called Automated Content Marketing System. Essentially what it does is that every day it collects the artist's content from the labels and like different sources that we have. And then our machine learning model looks at the content and then rank them by a certain criteria that we set internally. That could be like popularity, that could be like number of streams, whatever that is. We have the ranking by market right now. And based on that ranking, we make different combinations of the ads utilizing ad templates, content, and all the other stuff, and generate the ads and deploy them to multiple ad platforms that we utilize, including Facebook, Snap, TikTok, and so on. And it doesn't stop there. So our machine learning model looks at the ads continuously. And let's say we're running 10 ads. Then we take out 2 underperforming ones and then reintroduce like 2 new ads and then continuously optimize from there. And it has been helping us a lot because running this kind of like ads at the global scale was really needed. And one good use case for us is that let's say all of a sudden performance marketing team wants to run an ad around like Beyonce. And if you want to do that at the global scale, typically you need to work with like agency to come up with the ad concept and then like actually deploy it and then optimize it. But with our machine, we can just do it with one click. So that has been helping us a lot with our user acquisition strategy right now.
I see. So in terms of optimization, are you leveraging all these machine learning techniques and statistical methodologies as well? Or is it just tilted towards the automation itself?
Yeah, definitely. So the biggest thing we look at right now is the overall performance of the ads. Like in the past, we were thinking about building the machine learning model on the user level data, but then as you all know, like with the like data privacy rising and everything, we decided need to deprioritize that project. But now, like we are purely focusing on the performance and then like saying that if this is performing well, let's keep running. If not, then let's take it out. Like very simple, but also requires a lot of like thinking behind it.
I see. Just out of curiosity, how many creatives are you generating dynamically every day? Or like just a ballpark range?
Easily like thousands or like tens of thousands like every day. Yeah, it could be like rotating like every day. So we refreshes the ads like multiple times throughout the week. So like that has been really helping us with the creative refresh.
I see. So just one question is, when you actually run campaigns, for example, on Facebook, actually they will require a certain amount of time for them to optimize their campaigns. For example, like maybe 72 hours or up to like 7 days or 14 days. So how do you cope with all these different optimization mechanisms of each advertising platforms, for example, like Facebook and Google in this case? Yeah.
So we really need to understand the different nuances of like each ad platform. So as you mentioned on Facebook, I believe their threshold is like 50 conversions, and after that, like based on the learning, they would start optimizing it. So we would have like different ways of like how we approach like each ad optimization per ad platform right now.
I see.
So by implementing like, those custom logics, it really helps us to be confident about the metrics that we're seeing on the platform.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, thank you for your insight, Ryan. So lastly for Todd, it appears that Homer is actively driving a lot of conversions on web, which means that parents can sign up on web. And then could you please tell us on the background into the strategy and how the strategy is currently working for Homer?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know for most, iOS 14.5 and ATT was the big kind of kaboom for most businesses this year in the mobile app world. Because we're in the kids category, that actually happened for us a year earlier regarding COPPA and IDFA inside the app, where Apple made a pretty stern stance that for any kids apps, no IDFA can be included, which basically meant that we couldn't do the next upload of our app unless it was completely IDFA free, which at the time, all the MMPs didn't actually have kids-friendly IDFA free implementation. So the world of ours was coming very clean that we need to really pivot and think critically around if 98% of our acquisition UA happens on app and 95% of that happens on iOS, we have to diversify the web pretty quickly, right? Thankfully for kind of the category that we're in, the intent behind the user, which is both the parent and then the child using the product, is really high. So regardless if they download in the App Store, if they download or sign up on our website, they're automatically going to go to the app because the purpose and the intent is really about learning and the value of why they purchased the product in the first place. And as we started thinking about the web strategy, it became really interesting for a few reasons. One, out of just need, like we critically didn't know what the future of the world looked like, so we had to react and adapt. But there's a lot of plus sides in terms of a web-based acquisition strategy. We don't have the 30% Apple tax, which is super important. We know in general the kind of LTV of the cohorts on web are generally higher than what we see on iOS and Android. It allows us the ability to really increase that ARPU via bundling and upselling and cross-selling, and also introduces new marketing channels that just didn't exist really in the mobile app world that exist in kind of the traditional world. So we shifted pretty quickly, and thankfully, what was less than 5% of our overall acquisition business is around 55%, which is super exciting, and that also played into our business acquisition strategy of acquiring different companies that serve different TAMs, because our core product served a 3 to 6 kind of audience. But beyond that, we knew there's a wide range of consumers, and if we can really own that early education childhood experience, really from 0 all the way through the age of 10, it allows us to really change the dynamics of what people perceive the value of early education products being in the digital app world, which in many cases for parents is less about the true, I'm going to sign my kid up for an SAT prep course because I know he's taking an SAT, but really more of in some cases, a sideline product is saying, hey, this product is better than like my kid watching YouTube for the day, right? But when you really drive that outcome of what we're really being able to drive for that parent and that student or that child, then these products really open up a new light to what we're trying to do, which doesn't really as depend on our UA being perfect in the mobile app world, because we knew that the world of that was going to be becoming more and more funky, and we could still play there and penetrate there, but the ability for us to really own that web experience we knew was a real opportunity for us that we've really diversified into.
Yeah, you're right about that, Todd. So because of ATT, ironically, the presence of web is actually becoming larger nowadays. And actually, someone actually left a good question in a timely manner. So someone asked if you use the QR code to really convert the users who sign up on web. So how do you convert these users who sign up on web to eventually download the application?
Yeah, it's both QR code and a bunch of email communications to the parent. I mean, the intent behind that parent of when they're signing up in the product and the value is at an all-time high versus other categories where it might be less pristine to kind of sign up. And also we offer a 30-day free trial, so that trial experience and that journey is super important to that parent to kind of understand, hey, is this product really for me, and what is the value that we're providing them? And thankfully for that, the kind of adoption from I'm signing up in the App Store and downloading the app right away, or I'm downloading the app and then signing up, or I'm signing up on the web and then I'm ultimately going to the App Store and downloading the app, is as high as we would have expected times 100 in terms of that value, because the value and the intent is really there in terms of kind of the next step experience that the parent's really excited to play.
I see. So thanks for the great insight. It's actually really interesting that you are providing them with 30-day free trial in order to really just accelerate the mobile transition at the end of the day. Yeah, and it turns out to be really effective.
Yeah.
So now I would like to just move on to the more general topics so that we can all discuss together. And definitely on the screen you can see we have the slido.com. So anyone who would like to ask any questions to the panels, please do leave the questions. We will cover some of the questions and then come back to the open-ended questions from the audience. So maybe I would like to start with the hottest topic in our industry today, which is, of course, ATT and SK ad networks. So how are these policy impacted each one of you? So how are you coping with this visibility loss? And I assume it's becoming much harder for you to gain the visibility into some of the post-install user activities. And how are you coping with these new changes? So any one of you would like to start?
Yeah, I can go. I mean, I've always had the philosophy to go where the puck is heading, not where we are today. And so I think about future-proofing to a world where we don't have user-level data. So how do we actually understand measurement and what we're doing? So we look at it from a more holistic perspective, and so we do 2 different efforts. So one is looking from a MMM model, like looking at our overall spend and investment over a particular market to see what that diminishing curve is and the value of the incremental ROAS that we get. And then we run incrementality tests for each of our channels. And I think that's really critical to do, and it takes up a lot of work and time. I'm seeing now a lot of the media platforms start to offer match market testing capabilities, but it is an onerous process, but important. Particularly 2 important times is when you're in hyper growth, where you don't recognize whether your organic growth is actually being cannibalized by what you're doing. And then when you're mature and you've been spending at least 1 or 2 years in the same market, understanding the fact that your brand campaign work might be actually not as valuable as you think. And so you really have to think about where you're getting incremental value. So having a setup of incrementality across channels when you've been spending in specific markets for a while is important to do on a quarterly cadence and kind of spread that out across your channels.
I see. So the answer for the how to cope with these new changes, you mentioned media mix modeling or marketing mix modeling and incrementality. And in terms of incrementality, I just want to ask you a follow-up question on that because when you want to learn about incrementality, you have to run the experiments or you have to come up with your own observational machine learning-based or statistical models. So how do you do that on your day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, so you have to have a calibration point. So what the MMM can help you do is look from a holistic perspective for a quarter or a year, like what you need to be able to spend in a particular channel. And then on a more daily optimization basis, you are using the incrementality measurement test that you've run, and they're directionally giving you an indication of how much you do. And so what you try to do is, each algorithm needs time to learn, so you're either going to add or decrease 20 or 30% of your budget to see what's going to happen. So creating pulsing in terms of your budgeting will allow you to start to see some of those, but you have to let the algorithm learn enough, so it takes about 4 to 6 weeks before you actually get some signal.
I see. So what you just said is you would actually use MMM to actually get the bird view and just set up a high-level strategy and then use incrementality testing, which takes about 4 to 3 weeks to complete, to actually get the directional insight into your performance.
Yeah. And it's important to understand, now the media platforms have lift conversion tools, which are pretty good, and they're directionally helpful. But using a third-party or in-house platform is definitely going to give you more accurate. I generally see 15 to 20% delta, depending on the market. The challenges are in some of the more international markets where fidelity, particularly in your contamination of your control in your test group, geos, you need to really make sure that there's high fidelity. So markets like Brazil and India are not as well developed. The US is very well developed. So you can actually do this pretty well in the US. Europe is tricky now, more tricky. So that's why the need to actually have a more holistic way of thinking about it. And there are a lot more companies coming up with solutions around this.
So in order to do the geos testing, you have to have a high fidelity data in the first place. Okay, thank you. So Lenette, Ryan, and Todd, does any one of you would like to answer this question as well about SKA network and ATT?
Yeah, so at Inkitt, our UA team is pretty lean, and we've only gotten our Series B funding last year, and that's when we really started to scale up to like a reasonable budget. With limited tools and having the MMP and the scan data as my source of truth, I have to be a little bit more scrappy. So the way I see it is that there are 3 sources of data: your MMP data, where you get partial, like probabilistic data, where it's a good measurement of your app as a whole. Scan, it gives. So the MMP data, when it comes to like iOS campaign, I would say it's directional, depending on the percentage of tracked installs versus what Scan tells you that you have. So Scan data, as I see it, it is deterministic, but it's not like cohorted. And for the MMP data, it's cohorted, but it's not like fully there. And then also it's important to take the network's point of view in consideration. Like for example, Facebook is a good example. They will do their own self-attribution, and what they see, what we see on MMP, and what Apple says are like now 3 very different things. So I optimize according to like what's working best from like Facebook's point of view, and I split up my optimizations into maximum like once or twice, very rarely twice a week, and I will split up my bid optimizations and my bid optimizations, my budget optimizations, and creatives like separately. I would do them like one shot, like on the same day. But then I won't touch anything for like the next few days until I get some data in. And it's also useful to understand whether the cost data that you're seeing, is it calendar day or is it cohorted? Because on Facebook, like, the cost is calendar day, and so is the postback. So if you have a new campaign, first 2 days is like cost and like no installs. So typically, to get a good view, I cut out like the first week, and I take the second week of full data. And then in terms of, I would say, campaign structure, I've noticed that on iOS, it's better to keep your tests simple and super specific. So not like the days before where I'm looking for like, a 2-3% increase, and that's good. Now on Scanned, I'm looking for more of like a yes or no answer. Does this test perform well enough to like graduate into my very consolidated like evergreen campaigns?
I see. I mean, that's a lot of info, and definitely thank you for great insight. And I just want to quickly jump into one of the questions from the audience. So someone asked us, what does everyone's UA media mix look like? I know it's a very basic but very important question. So I just want to ask, like, any one of you can share your own media mix you're using.
Yeah, I mean, from a mobile app perspective, maybe to your earlier question, kids apps and the new Scan network don't necessarily get along too well now. We're both missing any IDFA inside the app because we can't have it, and we can't display the ATT screen of saying, do you want to track me or not? So what was before a pretty well pronounced kind of app-based acquisition strategy, at least for us, has been pretty sliced down to Apple Search Ads and UAC, where most of the focus of both the expansion and the strategy from a web perspective has really developed in terms of Facebook, TikTok, affiliate. We do TV, OTT, and kind of linear TV as well. So there's a lot of things that we're finding kind of to drive that macro volume and velocity that's not as easy to track, and to your point, require a lot of data support of media mix modeling, geo holdout testing, and kind of experiments to understand its true impact. But for us, it's really opened up what one door closed in some cases, right, and still hasn't gotten back to where we wanted it to be, opened up a lot of other doors that actually lend really well to where our consumer is and where that audience is that we just weren't playing in before. And most of this as well is invoked a more premium customer because we're not down and dirty, kind of inside the app, kind of in front of everyone's face every single day, but really able to drive that value and volume in more of a mid-funnel and lower funnel combination than purely just staying at the bottom of the funnel there.
I see. So do you also have a funnel strategy for your own media mix? So you use certain media for the upstream user acquisition, and then you also use some of their media to drive the re-engagement and some of the downstream events.
Yeah, I mean, our product, once they're inside the app, like the app itself serves the kind of continuity through the subscription model. For us, we're really focused on how do we drive that kind of day zero user acquisition. And for us, we're not a kind of cost per trial or cost per install business. We're really trying to understand how we can efficiently drive someone to a cost per trial, which really invokes us to be smart around our media strategy and making sure that we're as profitable as we can in terms of every customer that we acquire.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. And it seems like there are two questions that are related to each other from the audience. So someone asked, what's your opinion on the last click attribution? It's a very classic question. And at the same time, there's also a question about how are you handling incrementality testing? And I think, Sunil, you can really best answer these two questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your sophistication of your stack improves as you spend more and as you actually understand and grow. So at the beginning, if you're just a startup and you're trying to test, it's really about learning into it and spending, in increments to try and learn, try different audience, try different creative, and try to get a sense of what happens. When you start to see that you have organic growth starting to kickstart, that's when you need to make sure that your investment on your paid is incremental in value. And so you can run lift conversion tests inside Meta and in Google, and that's pretty easy to do. You don't have to do much work. And so that can give you a pretty good directional read. as you go more sophisticated, as you add a lot more channels, then you need a media mix model because now you have to figure out how you're making that investment across multiple channels. And to the point, I think that there is an importance of investing across the funnel. You need to figure out how you're building more people in your pipeline that can get to that product market fit versus people who are ready and ready to actually convert into trials. So you want to kind of think about how you're balancing those efforts, and you also want to understand as you start to spend in a few channels that you've allocated a budget to experimental channel and creative efforts so that it's not tied to your performance. And so you carve that out, and we're constantly testing new channels. I have a team that's constantly looking at new channels, particularly in local markets. So we're launching a lot of hyper-local channels. So my philosophy is that we first look at channels that have the ability to scale globally and through central means. And then in our international markets where we need to increase our growth and penetrate even further in, like in India or Brazil, we have a team there that's looking at these local market channels. So there's no TikTok in India, so there are other copycats of that, and they're doing really well, similar in Brazil. So I think that's important to kind of have that balance in terms of your investment as well as your strategy of how you look at your measurement.
I see. So as a beginner, you recommended maybe leveraging maybe platform side tools like Facebook lift test or Google's conversion lift testing solutions. And just wanted to know more about what should be the cadence of running these testing, and should it be at the campaign level or should it be at the media source level?
Again, it really depends on how long you've been spending and what you're trying to achieve. So I say that you should do it when you've been spending for at least a few months in a particular area and you're seeing impact to any numbers. So if you're seeing your CAC go up, it's an indication that there's probably something that needs to be adjusted or thought about. Mm-hmm. And you also should be looking at your overall growth, and really it's the organic piece that I think is really critical. It's understanding how your organic is growing with your paid, because I'll give you an example. At Uber, we were like spending and we just saw this kind of beautiful line of like, we're spending and it's growing. We cut 90% of our spend and it just kept going. So you just realize that a lot of what we were doing was either fraudulent or just cannibalizing organic. And so it's really important to make sure that you have that framework to test into ensuring that when you are starting to increase your spends, and that's like when your budgets are being increased, that you understand what that diminishing curve is in terms of your investment.
I see. Yeah, I definitely agree with you that organic cannibalization and fraud are the big two blockers of us getting right visibility. And I think there's a question for Ryan specifically. So someone asked, how do you automated ads perform on Google UAC campaigns? And automated ads often have issues with cropping image to fit a template. So how do you resolve this?
Yeah. So first of all, we do not run the content ads that we dynamically generated from our system on UAC at the moment. The biggest reason being UAC doesn't support A/B testing. So for the product team like us, we really care about the actual data that we can trust before shipping the solution to production in any way. And unfortunately, some of the channels like UAC don't have A/B testing capacity, so we're excluding it for now. But UAC is like one of the most used channel within Spotify, and definitely we are relying on it. And I guess like second question was about the like cropping the images and then fitting into the right dimension per ad platform. So we actually spent a lot of quarters to really nail it down. So as you all know, each ad platform has different dimensions. Like for example, TikTok has vertical ads. On Facebook, there could be like square size like images. And we pre-configured all the like dimensions per ad platform. And we can dynamically place the content of the artist images and also the text on the ads based on the size that we're trying to run the ads with. So for example, let's say we're trying to put a text saying, listen free with Spotify for millions of songs. And for vertical ads, that it may fit, but for a square size image, it may not fit. So we needed to dynamically configure that, let's shorten the text size on the square size image compared to the vertical image. And that's like all configured on the like programming side right now. And so yeah, as soon as we decide that let's run the ads on Facebook, for example, then it's all pre-configured and then all dynamic right now.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. So I think the time is already over. So maybe the last one sentence tip from all of you is just like one sentence tip. If you do want to give any tip to the marketers, what would that be? Just one sentence.
Fail fast and fail quick. I think the experimentation world that we're in right now is high as ever. and that we have to be open to what didn't work 3 weeks ago can work now, and what worked 3 weeks ago might not work anymore. So long tip, that's more than 3 words, but yeah.
Okay.
From products perspective, I would say data, data, data. We are losing the granularity of the data, but still there's a lot of data we can use like on daily basis. So I'll really look at the data that what you have and then try to make most out of it.
Sure. Thank you, Ryan.
I would say take all data with a pinch of salt, and look at all the data sets, and whatever is telling you the same across all 3 data sets is probably the source of truth.
Okay. Thank you, Lenette.
Yeah, I mean, those are all really great points. I think that the biggest thing that I've seen is that have a really robust measurement across multiple different avenues, so from a holistic standpoint, at a channel standpoint, and then a creative standpoint. Having those consistently built into your planning will help to understand who your leaders are and stakeholders that you need to make these investments today so that you don't run into situations where you're cutting after spend and showing no value to it.
Great. Yeah. Then thank you everyone for the great insight. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.